Wow, wow. Pura vida, mi gente. Much love and respect. Yeah, Shabbat Shalom. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you guys taking the time to be here. Today we're just gonna do, just for fun, a little Shabbat special. We're gonna do a little compilation of older videos, clips. We're gonna talk about Quetzalcoat, also Toltec, so-called Toltec mythology, and the architecture. We're gonna take a look at some images of the architecture as well, just to get a reference of the magnitude, the magnificent of the Mesoamerican structures. A lot of it done by the so-called Toltecs. But we're gonna get into a little bit of Quetzalcoatl. A lot of people, kind of been asking me. I got a lot of new people. I refer them back to my older videos, and it's just a lot of people don't go back. So we're gonna go ahead and do a little review today. We're gonna surf the wave. All right. I hope you enjoy, this little compilation. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you guys being here. All right. Shout out to Kane Rico for the beat. Kurimeo, yeah. You already know. Gonna see if this is the part where we're gonna go ahead and get started. We got a good crowd. I see everybody in the live chat. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you guys. Let me just see.
The land of Amaru, or the plum serpent. You're in the land of the plum serpent.
Yeah, you're in the land of the plum serpent, Amaru. Yo, let them know. Let them know, Kurimeo from the past. Kurimeo from the past. Hey, Joe, what do you know? Hey, Alik Chita Okla. Frank, hey, what's up? What's up to all the moderators and everybody else? Jackie, that's Kilik. Russell, thank you for being here. Emperor Rex, yeah. One love, one love. Simone, one love. Let them know, Kurimeo.
You understand? In the land of Quetzalcoatl. And who was Quetzalcoatl? We're gonna get. All right, so we're in this book. It's called The Secret Teachings of All Ages. Y'all, a lot of you probably familiar with this book. Have heard of it. Of course, I know a lot of you've heard of Manly P. Hall. You know who that is? Yeah, we're talking about, high degree Freemasons here. Yeah, we know. But they be dropping jewels, and they teach themselves these things. They keep the truth to themselves, because knowledge is power, right? So they use this power against us, right? But then they add their hijack into it, right? So, but they know certain things, right, that we're learning today. They've known these things, all right? So let me just show you one example, what we were just talking about, all right? So, and it says here, the red children of the sun, the red, all right, copper colored, red, they call you the red man, right? Right, writes James Morgan Precy. Do not worship the one God. For them, that one God is absolutely impersonal, and all of the forces emanated from that one God are personal. This is the exact reverse of the popular Western conception of a personal God and personal work and forces in nature. Decide for yourself which of these beliefs is the more philosophical. These children of the sun adore the plumed serpent. They adore the plumed serpent, really. Who is the messenger of the sun? The messenger of the sun? He was the god Quetzalcoatl. All right, so the plum serpent is Quetzalcoatl, right? We just got that before. All right, the Amaru is the plum serpent, so the plum serpent is Quetzalcoatl. So we're talking about the same thing. In Mexico, Gucumatz in Quiche, same person. And in Peru, he was called Amaru. He was called Amaru, Quetzalcoatl. From the latter name comes our word America. From the latter, from this Amaru, Amara, remember? The land of Amaraca. Amaruca is literally translated land of the plum serpent. Amaruca is the land of the plum serpent. America is the land of Amaru, the land of Quetzalcoatl, the land of plum serpent, the dragon, right? The priests of this god of peace from their chief center in the Cordilleras once ruled both Americas. The priests of this god of peace. Who we talking about? We talking about Prester John? We talking about King David? We talking about King David, who once ruled both Americas, North and South? All right, Mexico and Peru, all the kingdoms. all the red men who have remained true to the ancient religion, and all you still who are called red men, talking about the so-called Negro, right? Who have remained true to your ancient religion or your ancient law, your ancient connection with your Creator, Most High, are still under their sway. One of their strong centers was in Guatemala, and of their order was the author of the book called Popol Vuh. In the Quiche tongue, Gucumat is the exact equivalent of Quetzalcoalt in the Nahuatl language, Quetzal, the bird of paradise, Colt, serpent. The serpent built in plumes of the paradise bird. Alright? This is deep right here. We're going to get into this a little bit more. Alright? Alright, so let's learn a little bit about this character, Amaru. Amaru, aka Quetzalcoalt, Gucumat. Alright, Kukulkan. Alright, so we're in this book, Publications of the University of Pennsylvania, a series in Philology, Literature, and Archaeology, Volume 3. It says a primer of Mayan hieroglyphics. Alright, by Daniel G. Brinton, AM, MD, LLD, SC. Look at, he got all the letters. Alright, Professor of American Archaeology and Linguistics in the University of Pennsylvania, President of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, etc., etc. Now we're going to pick up here in page 39, right about here. It says, in the myth, he is described as clothed in a long robe. Now they're talking about Itzama, who is, they're relating to Kukumats and Kukulkan, and we know that it's the same as Quetzalcoatl. We got that as well from the last readings, that Amaru is also Kukutsmats, right? Right, in Quiche. So we're talking about the same people. So it says that this person, right, this mythical person is described as clothed in a long robe, all right, a long robe, and wearing sandals. A long robe and wearing sandals. And what is noteworthy, having a beard. What is noteworthy? What is most noteworthy? All right, because he has a long robe, sandals, and a beard. Who does that describe, man? Who does that sound like? In the calendars of the Centauls, he was painted in the likeness of a man and a snake, and the masters explained this as the snake with feathers, which moves in the waters, that is, the heavenly waters, the cloud and the rains, for which reason Bishop Nunez de la Vega, to whom we owe this information, identified him with the Mexican Mixcolt, the cloud serpent, whereas Bishop Landa was in opinion that he was the Mexican Quetzalcoalt. Alright, Amaru. Alright, so we're talking about Quetzalcoatl, but remember why we got there, right? Because we were talking about the kings of Amaraca, or Amaru, right? Amaraca, Amaru, right? On the Pacific coast had a road which followed the course of the Andes Mountains, connecting their city with the capital of Cundin, Amaraca, right? Remember, this was in Bogota, which is modern-day Colombia today, Bogota, right? Bogota. And remember that it told us down here that they placed a cross right on the tomb, which was the American Peruvian sign for the word Amaru, a cross, Amaru, all right? And with the addition of the word Ka, or land, represents the sacred national name America. So remember, Amaru is Quetzalcoatl, all right? So we're in this other book called Researches Concerning the Institutions and Monuments of the Ancient Inhabitants of America. This is written by Alexander D. Humboldt. Again, this is another book by Alexander D. Humboldt that we've read from it before. All right, we're going to go to page 29. So we'll start out the page at the bottom of page 28. It says, though no traditions point out any direct connection between the nations of North and South America, their history is not less fraught with analogies in the political and religious revolutions from which dates the civilization of the Aztecs, the Muiscas, and the Peruvians. Muiscas, we got that in the other book. Men with beards, again, men with beards, and with clearer complexions than the natives of Anahuac. Cundinamarca, look at that, Anamarca, there you go, Anamarca. That's in Bogota, right, with the kings of Amaraca were. All right, so these people with beards, with clearer complexions, does not mean white, that doesn't mean white. And the elevated plain of Cusco make their appearance without any indication of the place of their birth, and bearing the title of high priest of legislators, all right, lawgivers, of the friends of peace and the arts, which flourished under its auspices, operated sudden change in the policy of the nations, who hailed their arrival with veneration. Quetzalcoalt, Boshika, and Manco Capac are the sacred names of these mysterious beings. All right, so Quetzalcoalt, who is Amaru, remember Quetzalcoalt is Amaru, is also Boshika from the people in Colombia or Bogota region, same place as where Cundinamarca is. All right, and Manco Capac is an Amaru, right, an Inca, one of the first. All right, it says Quetzalcoalt clothes in a black sacerdotal robe, a black sacerdotal robe. All right, in a robe again. Comes from Panuco, from the shores of the Gulf of Mexico. Boshika, the Buddha of the Muishkas, the Buddha. Who's the real Buddha? We're talking about Quetzalcoalt, right? We're talking about that Buddha's first name is Guatama, right? Like Guatemala. Guatemala, and his mom's name is Maya, right? Buddha's mom's name is Maya. We're talking about Quetzalcoalt, all right? Who is Boshika, who is the Buddha of the Muishkas, Muishka, Meshach, Muishka, Moshko, Moshe. All right, now we're in this different book. All right, it's a little blurry, all right, but bear with me, that's the way it just, it is. It was very pixelated. All right, but it's called The Myths of Mexico and Peru by Louis Spence. All right, got him from some of my Atlantis books. Very good author. Quotes a lot of good sources. All right, and it says here, Quetzalcoalt. It is highly probable that Quetzalcoalt was a deity of the pre-Nahua people of Mexico. Pre meaning before the Nahua. Says he was regarded as the father of the Toltecs. And legend says that the seventh and youngest son of the Toltec Abraham, Quetzalcoatl, Quetzalcoatl, whose name means feathered serpent or feathered staff, the staff, became a relatively early period ruler of Tolan, and by his enlightened sway and his encouragement of the liberal arts did much to further the advancement of his people. Perhaps the most important of these is that which regards Quetzalcoatl as a god of the air. He is connected, say some, with the cardinal points and wears the insignia of the cross. He wears the insignia of the cross, which symbolizes them. Again, we're in the book Discovery of the Origin of the Name of America, all right? We're still talking about the name of America, right? It says that they put the sign of the cross was placed on the tombs of people who got bit by snakes, which is the American Peruvian sign for the word Amaru. The cross is Amaru, is Quetzalcoatl, the cross, Amaru. And with the addition of the word Ka, or land, represents the sacred national name America, Amaru, Amaru, the cross. The cross. We're in the book Anacalypsis, an attempt to draw aside the veil of the static Isis, or the inquiry into the origin of the languages, nations, and religions, by the late Godfrey Higgins. All right, volume 2, 1836. All right, and it says here, Quetzalcoatl, or Cotle, is represented in the paintings of the Codex Borgianos. All right, so he's represented in the Mexican Codex, right, nailed to the cross. Nailed to the cross. Sometimes even to two thieves are the crucified with him. So it says sometimes even two thieves are crucified with him, just like the story of Jesus, right? Quetzalcoatl, all right? In volume 2, plate 75, the god is crucified in the heavens in a circle of 19 figures, the number of the Metonic cycle. A serpent is depriving him of the organs of generation. In the Codex Borgianos, the Mexican god is represented crucified and nailed to the cross, and in another place hanging to it, with a cross in his hands. And in one instance where the figure is not merely outlined, the cross is red. The clothes are colored, and the face and hands quite black. The face and hands quite black. If this was the Christianity of the German Nestorius, how came he to teach that the crucified Savior was black? Oh, why didn't he teach that the Savior was so-called black or a Negro, right? Copper colored, right? Why didn't they teach that? You see what they're telling you? And these codices in the Aztec and these Mexican codices, right? Quetzalcoatl, or the person being crucified, their savior, right? Who's being crucified is black, or so-called black, a Negro person, all right?
Also, hey, what's up? We're live. Welcome to the live presentation on Quetzalcoatl. We're doing a little throwback and compilation of old videos put together here. We're doing a little story. Hope you guys see what is being said about Quetzalcoatl, and these old codices I was saying here, they are portraying him as a dark complexion person in general. And also, as I said yesterday in my videos, we were reading that in the codices in Mexico, and these old codices, and yesterday in the other book we were reading, they had the deities holding the snake and the staff, right? So you see, guys, this is what I'm talking about. This is exactly what I was talking about. Just like Moses' staff turned into a snake and went against the Pharaoh and his priests, right? It's the same symbology. This is what I'm saying. Look at them. The staff is a serpent and it turns is vice versa. All right. Let's continue. Let them know, Kurimeo from the past. Let them know. Keep going, man. You're on fire, man.
The name of the god who was crucified was Quetzalcoatl. Again, Quetzalcoatl. All right, we're back in the book Mythos of Mexico and Peru, and then, I mean, there's this image here, and they're talking about Quetzalcoatl, right? All right, and I just want you to let me just close in. I mean, let me just show you. This is another copy of the same book. You can see this image right here, which says the aged Quetzalcoatl leaves Mexico on a raft of serpents. On a raft of serpents, right? Is he flying on a dragon? What's going on here? All right, so Quetzalcoatl, right? You can't see him, right? But on this version of it, which is blurry, if we zoom in, we can see him, right? Let's just zoom into him real quick. All right, can y'all see this? Can y'all kind of make out? Look what they're showing you right here. This is Quetzalcoatl. Look at the clothing, the robe, look at the beard. You can almost see long hair.
Alright, this is the PDF I got of it. You see it better. Who is that? Is this the Grand Khan? Is this King David? Is this Prester John? Meshi, Moses, Quetzalcoatl, Jehoshua, Yahawashi? What are we looking at right here?
Yeah, what are we looking at? Yeah, the voice might have changed just due to making sure we don't get copyrighted for the background music or anything like that, you know. But bear with us. You guys see the drawing here? How they drew Quetzalcoatl?
Amaru, Quetzalcoatl, Amaru. Says here Ancient America Foundation. Alright, says Italy Chotlint, which is an author, in those times a Spaniard, maybe mixed with Indian. Quetzalcoatl and Jesus Christ, says here. Alright. Says in Mexico's great central mesa where Itztli lived, the name by which the fair god of ancient America was generally known was Quetzalcoatl. Quetzal was the name of the beautiful bird with the resplendent long green feathers and the dainty crest. Colt is the ancient Mexican word for serpent. Thus the name Quetzalcoatl means literally Quetzal bird, serpent. Quetzalcoatl was the name applied to the New World god who was in the form of a man, bearded, white-robed, and a great teacher of moral principles. Alright? A bearded man with a robe and a great teacher of moral principles. The colt or serpent was an ancient symbol of Israel's Messiah, the anointed one. So the serpent meant the anointed one. Alright? Alright, so just one quick reference, one more of Quetzalcoatl. We're in this book, Antiquities of Mexico by Lord Kingsborough. I've explained this book in some of my videos before. Research, you know, his 9-volume collection, what it's about and everything, all these prestige libraries that are holding all these. These are facsimiles, alright? Facsimiles of the Mexican codices, meaning exact copies, alright? They breaking down the plates and the codices, alright? It says here, plate 2. Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl. And it has these 2 marks here, right? You see that? Let's go to that footnote right now. It says, the Messiah. The Messiah is shadowed in the Old Testament under many types, such as those of a lion, a lamb, a roe, the morning star, or the planet Venus, otherwise called Lucifer, the sun, light, a rock, a stone, the branch, the vine, wine, bread, water, life, the way, and he is there recognized in the triple character of a king, a priest, and a prophet. We're talking about a Khan, king, priest, a prophet. It is very extraordinary that Quetzalcoatl, who the Mexicans believe equally to have been a king, a prophet, and a pontiff, should also have been named by them Cakchiquels, or the morning star, Tlaviscalpantecutli, or light, Meshitli, Meshi, Messiah, Meshi, All right, so Messiah says Quetzalcoatl again is he who was born of the virgin. He was born of a virgin? Whoa. So wait a minute. So wasn't also Jesus born of a virgin? Did you know Quetzalcoatl was born of a virgin? You see these stories where they originate, right? All right, so we're in this book. It's called A Book of the Beginnings by Gerald Massey. All right. And it says here, as Shu and Anhar in Egyptian mythology, and Moses and Joshua conducted their people with the solar orb round the circle of science, overcoming the opposing powers postulated by the early men, so in the Toltec mythology, Huemak or Huematzin and Quetzalcoalt conducted their people through the pilgrimage and wanderings recorded in their picture writing. Huemak, like Moses, wrote the code of laws for the nation and conducted the civil government. Quetzalcoalt, in relation to Huemak, plays the part of Joshua. Again, Quetzalcoalt, in relation to Huemak, plays the part of Joshua. All right, so we ain't talking about an allegorical New Testament Roman propaganda. Jesus, we're talking about the Torah. We're talking about foundational truth. We're talking about the person who really led the Israelites into Jerusalem, who took over after Moses, Meshi, who's called in the Old Testament Joshua, but his name is Yahawashi, right? Or Jehoshua, Yahawashi. All right. When Quetzalcoatl began to give the laws instead of Huemak, he sent a crier to the top of the mountain of outcry, whose voice could be heard for 300 miles round. Joshua follows Moses as the leader of Israel and instructs the people to go up against Jericho, his mountain of outcry, and assail it with a shout that ought to have been heard at an equal distance, as it was loud enough to make the walls fall flat.
The old Red Land, Huetlapalan, was the name of the original home in the north from which the Toltecs migrated. All right, they're talking about Utah. What are you talking about? Their leader, Quetzalcoatl, wore a long robe with crosses. He wore a long robe with crosses. Again, discovery of the origin of the name of America, right? It told us that when a person got bit by a snake, they put the sign of the cross on their tomb, which is the American Peruvian sign for the word Amaru, the cross, Amaru. It is Amaru, cross, Amaru, synonymous, cross. All right, so again, Amaru is Quetzalcoatl, and Quetzalcoatl, all right, again, he wears a long robe marked with crosses, Amaru, cross. The sign identifies him as the one who crosses, Quetzalcoatl attained the land of promise, and in his golden reign, an ear of wheat grew so large that one man could hardly carry it. Joshua led the people into the land flowing with milk and honey, where a single bunch of grapes was a load for 2 men. All right, so we're talking about Yahawashi, Quetzalcoatl, Amaru. I know we went off subject a little bit, but it has to do with what we're talking about, right? They just added the ka, so it's the land of Amaraka, Amaru, Quetzalcoatl, the plumed serpent, the Khan, the priest kings, the land of the priest kings. You understand? Pastor John, King David. We're talking about ancient, the seed. We're talking about the true Ibaria.
All right, just for a little bit more correlation, since we're talking about this today and we got to this point, we got this documentary here, research from the Brigham Young University in Utah. The title of this is Quetzalcoatl, the Maya Maize God, and Jesus Christ, all right, by Diane E. Worth, Journal of Book of Mormon Studies. Now, just what I want to mention real quick is, I don't know if you knew, but in the Mormon religion, Quetzalcoatl is actually, they tell you Quetzalcoatl is actually Jesus, right? What they say is that it's Jesus when he resurrected and he came to America. That's their whole, that's their own little hijack they added, all right? We're going to dodge the hijack big time. But at least, hey, man, they might be onto something. They just, got to dodge the hijack with that Seuss stuff and that New Testament Christian kind of religious view of it, man. We're just talking about you are the book. We're just trying to show you a different correlation, a different story, a different way to see things that you thought was religion. Nobody's talking about religion right now. All right, so again, it says here, many scholars suggest that Quetzalcoatl of Mesoamerica, also known as the feathered serpent, and the Maya Maize God, and Jesus Christ could all be the same being. By looking at the ancient Mayan writings, such as the Popol Vuh, this theory is further explored and developed. These ancient writings include several stories that coincide with the stories of Jesus Christ in the Bible, such as the creation and the resurrection, the role that both Quetzalcoatl and the maize god played in bringing maize to humankind is comparable to Christ's role in bringing the bread of life to humankind. You understand how they hijacked the story? It's all about the corn, maize god, just like Mary is the corn mother. Nourishment. It became in Isis for nourishment, the mom, but it was always about the corn mother. Check out my corn videos. And I also mentioned this in my corn videos about Quetzalcoatl, how he's the maize deity. And it's all represented about resurrection, just like Osiris. Just like Osiris is the god of resurrection and nourishment too, like crops, agriculture and all that. He is a corn deity. Literally, Osiris is a corn deity. He got corn growing out of him. That's literal, man. Like you can go check out my corn videos. All right, 4 parts. All right, so again, it says here the role that both Quetzalcoatl and maize god played in bringing maize to humankind is comparable to Christ's role in bringing the bread of life to humankind. Furthermore, Quetzalcoatl is said to have descended to the underworld to perform a sacrifice, strikingly similar to the atonement of Jesus Christ. These congruencies and others like them suggest that these 3 gods are in fact three representation of the same being. All right, so which one is the duplicate, huh? Which one is the duplicate? Again, this is the title of the book, Quetzalcoatl, the Maya maize god, and Jesus Christ. It says here, legends abound. Quetzalcoatl from Mexico and Central America bring forward tantalizing resemblances to aspects of the life and new world ministry of Jesus Christ. All right, so dodge the hijack, remember? In the past, some leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints occasionally drew attention to certain of those similarities. Among these, those mentioned in post-Spanish conquest. Now we're going to get to what we read earlier about what's in the codices. It says among those mentioned in post-Spanish conquest manuscripts where that Quetzalcoatl was the creator, that he was born of a virgin, all right? He was born of a virgin, that he was God of the air and earth, air, the ruach, the spirit, and his manifestation as the feathered serpent, the drakan, the dragon, the feathered serpent, the priest king, that he was white and bearded, not white, white was pure, meaning pure, white and bearded, pure and bearded, right? Bearded, right? Beard, people had beard, right? They say Indians didn't have beard, right? That he came from heaven and was associated with the planet Venus, that he raised the dead, and that he promised to return. All right, this is all in the Mexican codices. You see where they got these allegorical stories from, right? So we're going to come back to this in a future video. Just want to show you that in Mormon religion, literally Quetzalcoatl is Jesus Christ in the Mormon religion. All right, I just wanted you guys to know that. All right, let's continue.
I'm going to get into this book. It's called Historia de las Indias de Nueva España y Islas de Tierra Firme. This is written by Padre Fray Diego Duran, or the Fray, the priest friar Diego Duran. All right. Obviously, I'm not going to read this in Spanish. I just wanted to show you that I have the original, written Spanish account. All right. All right. So in English, this book would be called The History of the Indies of New Spain. Again, by Fray Diego Duran, translated, annotated, and with an introduction by Doris Hayden, this version of it, right? All right, so before we continue, just wanted to talk about who Diego Duran was. All right, so it says here in Wikipedia, Diego Duran was a Dominican friar, best known for his authorship of one of the earliest Western books on the history and culture of the Aztecs, one of the earliest ones, The History of the Indies of New Spain, a book that was much criticized in his lifetime for helping the heathen maintain their culture. Helping the heathen, all right, also known as the Duran Codex. All right, so it has another name called the Duran Codex. The History of the Indies of New Spain was completed about 1581. That's what we're about to read. Duran also wrote Book of the Gods and Rites, 1574. 1576, and Ancient Calendar in 1579. He was fluent in Nahuatl, the Aztec language, and was therefore able to consult natives and Aztec codices. All right, so he's interpreting from the actual codices and from personal conversations he had with these Mexica people, all right, Aztec, as well as work done by earlier friars. His empathetic nature allowed him to gain the confidence of many native people who would not share their stories with Europeans, and was able to document many previously unknown folktales and legends that make his work unique. Alright, so I'm going to start right in chapter 1, right? We're going to start in this book, and I just wanted to show this in Spanish, so anybody out there who knows Spanish, you can just translate it yourself. You can pause it. We're going to go back to the English version. I've pretty much verified it's pretty accurate, the translation. All right, so let's go to it right now. Again, we're in the book The History of the Indies of New Spain, written by the Fray Diego Duran, very primary source. And it says here, in order to provide a truthful and reliable account of the origin of these Indian nations, an origin so doubtful and obscure, we would need some divine revelation or assistance to reveal this origin to us and help us understand it. They're trying to figure you out so much. All right. However, lacking that revelation, we can only speculate and conjecture about these beginnings, basing ourselves on the evidence. All right. So let's just base ourselves on the evidence. All right. Not theories provided by these people, whose strange ways, conduct, and lowly actions are so like those of the Hebrews. Like what? Like who? Like the Hebrews. Fray Diego Duran telling you straight up, chapter 1, right in the beginning. Thus we can almost positively affirm that they are Jews and Hebrews. What does this mean, Jews and Hebrews? I thought it was the same thing. Starts to hijack with Jews. No J's, alright, in Paleo Hebrew. Hebrew, Eber, feather, pinion. He who lives on the opposite side, the crossing, Eber. He who separated himself in the Tower of Babel, and his language did not get confused, Eber, Hebrew, an ancestor of Abraham. Abra means pinion, Abra, feather. Feathers up. And I would not commit a great error if I were to state this as fact. He ain't committing an error telling you these are Hebrews, because he knows it's a fact, considering their way of life, their ceremonies, their rites and superstitions, their omens and hypocrisies, so akin to and characteristic of those of the Hebrews. In no way do they seem to differ. The Holy Scriptures bear witness to this. If you read your scriptures, you will see this, and you see their ceremonies. And if you read their codices, you will see same stories as the Old Testament. And from them, we draw proofs and reason for holding this opinion to be true. As proof thereof, we know that this newly arrived nation, latecomers from strange and remote regions, made a long and tedious journey, searching and finally taking possession of this land. They spent many months and years in coming to this place. The truth of this matter can be found by drawing on their traditions and paintings, and by talking to their elders, some of whom are very old. All right, not because he's making stuff up in his mind and he wants to be famous and has an agenda, or he's a Sephardic Jew. No, they don't. It's deeper than that. That's your own hijack. All right, he's talking to the elders. They're straight up telling him. But right now we're in the Library of the Aboriginal American Literature. All right, number 6, edited by D.G. Brinton, M.D. And we are in the Annals of the Cakchiquels, the original text with a translation, notes, and introduction by Daniel G. Brinton, M.D., professor of ethnology and archaeology at the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia. He was president of the Numismatic and Antiquarian Society of Philadelphia, member of the American Philosophical Society, the American Antiquarian Society, the Historical Societies of Pennsylvania and New York, etc., membre de la Société Royale des Antiquaires du Nord, de la Société Américaine de France, all right, French, de la Société d'Anthropologie de Paris, Délégué général de Institution de Ethnographie, Vice President du Congrès International, Vice President of the International Congress of the Americanist, corresponding member of the Anthropological Society of Washington. All right, is this pseudo? All right, can we say we can trust this as a source, at least as a scholarly source? All right, we always gotta dodge the hijack, take the babies out. But all right, let's go into this book. Now I'm gonna read from the preface. I hate to just go through the whole details, but we just want everybody to have a clear perspective when we're reading these texts and where are they coming from. All right, so it says here, both for its historical and linguistic merits, the document which is presented in this volume is one of the most important in Aboriginal American literature. Most important, written by the native who had grown to adult years before the whites penetrated to his ancestral home. Alright, this is a translation of the Cakchiquels. Alright, these were Quiche Maya people. Alright, so it's saying that this is a personal written account of one of these Quiche people, the Cakchiquels, who had grown to adult years before the whites penetrated to his ancestral home. Himself a member of the ruling family of one of the most civilized nations of the continent and intimately acquainted with its traditions. His work displays the language in its pure original form. Alright, so this book contains the original Cakchiquel language, the way he wrote it, right, in his language, and then it's translated from there, from the original, and also preserves the tribal history and a part of the mythology as they were current before they were in the least affected by European influences, before any so-called agenda by a Sephardic Jew or any Jew trying to establish, or any goat worshiping people. Man, you are lost. All right, these are personal historical account from the Cakchiquel himself before any European influence. That's what we're about to read, and we're gonna show you what they were writing in their annals, in their documents, in their history. Again, we're just in the annals of the Cakchiquels. All right, it says here, introduction, ethnologic position of the Cakchiquels. The Cakchiquels, whose tradition and early history are given in the present work from the pen of one of their own authors, were a nation of somewhat advanced culture who occupied a portion of the area of the present state of Guatemala. All right, they were one of the group of 4 closely related nations, adjacent in territory and speaking dialects so nearly alike as to be mutually intelligible. The remaining 3 were the Quiches. All right, Quiches, that's their family. Told you, the Tsutztuhils and the Acajals, who dwelt respectively to the west, the south, and the east of the Cakchiquels. Alright, so that was just an introduction of what we're about to read. I just wanted you to have a clear perspective. Alright, so let's belly flop to the part that correlates with what we were just reading in the Histories of the New Spain by Diego Du. Alright, so this is like what the original pronunciation of their writing would sound like. So it's like Ok Sho Ul. So that's what he's translating. I just want to show you that. Alright, so we're gonna go right here, belly flop to page 79. Remember, this is their story. This is their story of how they arrived in Guatemala, all right, in their journey. So on page 79 it says, then we arrived at the sea coast. We arrived at the sea coast. There were gathered together the warriors of all the 7 villages at the sea. A great number perished, devoured by sorrow. There is no means of passing, nor it is told of any one who has passed the sea. They can't cross the sea. Oh no, said all the warriors of the 7 villages. Who will find means to pass the sea? In thee alone, my brother, in thee alone have we hope, said they all. Who they referring to? We said to them, you may go on, you may be first. Who will find the means of crossing while we are here? All of us spoke thus, and then all of them said, have pity on us, our brother, since we are all stretched on the shore of the ocean without seeing our hills and plains. As soon as we were asleep, we were conquered. We, the 2 oldest sons, we, the chiefs and guides of the warriors of the 7 villages, of oh my brother. 2 oldest sons. Would that we had passed and could see the burdens given us by our mothers and fathers, O my brother. So they spoke. At that time the Quiche nation had increased. Our ancestors Gagavits and Cakchiquels said, we said to them, we suffer also, our brother. We do not live stretched out on the shore of the ocean, where we cannot see our mountains, where they are, as you say, oh, you warriors, you people of the 7 villages. We shall pass over at once. Thus we spoke, and soon all of them rejoiced. Now there was a red tree, again, now there was a red tree. This is the part, all right? Pay close attention. A red tree. Are we talking about a cedar tree? Our staff. Whoa, there was a red tree, which is our staff. Did Moses carry a staff? Which we had taken in passing from the gate of Toulon. In the gate of Toulon, Aslan, Utah. And therefore we are called the Cakchiquel people. The people of the red tree or staff. The red tree where the cedars are. We're talking about Lebanon, Aslan, place of whiteness. Oh, our sons said, Gagavits and Cakchiquels. The root of this, our staff, was pushed into the sand of the sea. Okay, what did they do? The root of this, our staff, was pushed into the sand of the sea. The staff was put onto the sand of the sea. And soon the sea was separated from the sand. The sea was separated from the sand. And for this the red tree served, which we brought from Toulon. That's what the red tree, the staff, served for. So it can part the sea, separate. Sea was separated from the sand. When the root of this staff was pushed into the sand of the sea, and the sea was separated from the sand, they parted the sea. The Cakchiquels parted the sea, their leader, with a staff. This is their writing. We're in Exodus. We're in chapter 14. We're going to start in verse 9. It says, the Egyptian army, with all the horses, chariots, and the drivers, pursued them and caught up with them, where they were camped by the Red Sea. They were camped by the Red Sea. Camped by the Red Sea. So they were living on the shore, just like the Cakchiquels just told us. When they arrived at the shore, they couldn't see their planes. They wanted to cross near Fi Hahiroth and Baal Zephon. When the Israelites saw the king and his army marching against them, they were terrified and cried out to the Lord for help. Didn't we just read the Cakchiquel telling us? The Annals of the Cakchiquels. Again, who will find means to pass the sea? And thee alone, my brother, and thee alone have we hope, said they all. We hope, said they all. Again, they were terrified and cried out to Hawa for help. They said to Moses, they said to who? Oh, brother, they said to their brother Moses, were there any graves in Egypt? Did you have to bring us out here in the desert to die? Look what you have done by bringing us out of Egypt. Didn't we tell you before we left that this would happen? We told you to leave us alone and let us go on being slaves of the Egyptians. It would be better to be slaves there than to die here in the desert. Do you want to be a slave? Is it better to be a slave? Moses answered, don't be afraid. Stand your ground, and you will see what Hawa will do to save you today. You will never see these Egyptians again. Hawa will fight for you, and all you have to do is keep still. Just chill. Just breathe easy. Wow. And Hawa said to Moses, why are you crying out for help? Tell the people to move forward. Keep it moving. Lift up your walking stick. Your stick, we're talking about a staff. Lift up your red stick, all right, that you got from Toulon. Your red stick, Cakchiquel, and hold it out over the sea. The water will divide. and the Israelites will be able to walk through the sea on dry ground. I will make the Egyptians so stubborn that they will go in after them, and I will gain honor by my victory over the king, his army, his chariots, and his drivers. When I defeat them, the Egyptians will know that I am Hawa. Alright? So this stick helped Moses divide the water, separate the water. Annals of the Cakchiquels. And we had a red tree, which was our staff. We had a red tree, my people, our staff. Alright? The root of this, our staff, was pushed into the sand of the sea, and soon the sea was separated from the sand. And for this the red tree served, which we brought from Toulon. Soon the sand was as line, and we passed out. It became wide above the sea and below the sea. Then all rejoiced, we rejoiced when they saw sand in the sea. When they saw the sand split, when they saw they can walk through it, they gave thanks, they rejoiced. And many consulted together. There indeed is our hope. We must gather together on these first lands, they said. Here only can we arrange ourselves since leaving Toulon. And they're talking about arriving at Mexico. So where was this Red Sea?
All right, so before we actually talk about the real Red Sea, I hope you guys understand. And shout out to the live crowd. We're live, we're doing a little drop here, a compilation of old videos here, just to talk about Quetzalcoatl and the mythology involved here with the so-called Toltec people, right? And we're gonna get a look at the architecture. So I hope you guys understand what I'm showing here, right? And what I'm showing you is here a historical oral tradition written down in the 1500s, these codices translated from the elders, with Cakchiquel elder, a Maya Cakchiquel elder from the 1500s, right? Translating his tradition that their leader had a staff and he put it on the sand and he split the sea, he opened the waters, he parted the waters, just like the story of Moses, which I was just showing you. If you're not understanding or paying attention, well, I hope you understand now. All right, we're just talking about a real people, real biblical people, real history. You are the book. All right, so they were coming from the Red Sea, huh? Red Sea, huh? Where's the real Red Sea? We're gonna get it like it's the first time. You ready? Let's go. Because we're talking about a parting of the seas, and we're talking about these Cakchiquels who went to Mexico, right? And we're talking about the Bible tells us it's on the Red Sea. And respect to UB News for bringing this perspective. And as you see here on this map, which is the codfish map of North America from Herman Moll, 1720. All right, you can see that it says in between the Baja California and Mexico is the Gulf of California, and we see it says Gulf of California or Red Sea. All right, Red Sea, the Red Sea, the Gulf of California or the Red Sea. All right, let's back up so you can see where we are. All right, U.S., Louisiana or Florida, New France up here, the whole, look at this, the whole East Coast. All right, but you see the Gulf of California or the Red Sea shows California as an island. All right, we know where was Utah around over here. We're talking about Aslan and migration. We know that the also the Colorado River, right? The Colorado River empties into the Gulf of California. You can see on old maps as well. All right, Rio Colorado just means red. So did the sea really extend all the way up here before, right? We know that the Salt Lake is a salt, that was an ancient ocean up there, right? All right, so Colorado, Gulf of California or Red Sea. All right, it's all kind of the same. All right, so I found this article. It's called Names for the Gulf of California, a historical review by R.C. Brusca with great assistance from Ezequiel Escura and Jorge Soberon. Compiled in 2005, updated in 2018. Summary: the Gulf of California has been called many things, but collectively, with spelling variations aside, these boil down to 4 names. See chronology below.
So it says here, number 1, Mar Bermejo, or Vermilion Sea, Vermilion Sea. You're going to see that in a lot of maps on the Gulf of California. The original name given by Francisco Ulloa in 1539. So even though we just saw that map in 1700s, this was a reference they were given to the Gulf of California since at least 1539. The first person in historic times to sail to the head of the Gulf. The name also appears as Vermiglion, Vermijo, and Rojo. So Vermelho, right? Or Vermelho, right? Etymology, from Old Portuguese, vermelho, red. Again, vermelho means red sea, so the vermelho sea means red sea. Again, as an adjective, vermelho, right, it says red, having red as its color, red, socialist or communist. So vermelho, noun, as a noun, red, color, as an adjective, red. Alright, as a noun and as an adjective, it means red. Alright, so we're in this map, is the map of North and South America, and it shows the northwestern part of America blank. Some say because it was all occupied. Many maps have this area blank, and a lot of people on YouTube saying because this is the land of giants. So, it was, you couldn't get through there and they couldn't map it, whatever, but, it shows that a lot. And it shows California as an island as well. And it says here again, Mare Vermelho, Mare Vermelho, Red Sea. All right, we know what that means now, Red Sea. So when you see this on maps, you know that means red. And then we got Mare Rubrum. All right, we're gonna get into that. All right, so Mare Rubrum, remember Mare Rubrum? So it says here on the Red Sea in Wikipedia, on the Red Sea. All right, let's go to names. It says Red Sea is a direct translation of the Greek Erythra Thalassa. In Latin, what is it called? Mare Rubrum. Mare Rubrum. Alright, Red Sea is Mare Rubrum in Latin. You're gonna see that in a lot of the maps. Again, we got Mare Vermelho and Mare Rubrum. Two different languages just to make it clear for you, Red Sea. Again, we're returning to the Annals of the Cakchiquels. Now that we got a clear perspective, right, of what they're crossing. They rushed forth and passed across the sand. And this is an account of one of them. This is their personal history. This is not European influence. This is a direct translation of the Cakchiquel language. Alright, it says, they rushed forth and passed across the sand. And following one another, we came to the shore of the sea. And we arrived at the edge of the water. Again, don't forget we were in the history of the Indies of New Spain by the Fray Diego Duran, a primary source during the time of conquest. Alright, and he was telling us right before we left that what clearer proof do we need that these people, he's talking about the Mexica, were Jews or Hebrews, than their own reference to the flight from Egypt, wherein Moses moved the waters with his rod. The sea opened up, a path appeared, and after Pharaoh followed with his army, God caused the sea to return to its place, with the result that all their enemies drowned in the deep. And if this account is not convincing enough, I should like to tell about another event that the Aztecs claim happened on their long migration. Alright, so he's telling you straight up that the elder, Mexica elder, told him this, telling their history, explaining it word by word, the same story in Exodus. Alright, now I just want to read this footnote regarding what Diego Duran said about, his story about them parting the sea, separating the sea. Right? It says Duran's leaning toward biblical interpretations is seen in his claims that Quetzalcoalt, opened a path in the sea with his rod, the waters returning to their place and drowning the pursuers after the followers of the divine personage had fled to safety. Quetzalcoalt, whose name means feather serpent, was also called Cakchiquels. One read, his birth date in Topiltzin, our Lord. Right, so Cakchiquels Topiltzin, right? Or Quetzalcoalt, our prince. One read, feather serpent. Look at the time. Is a mythologized figure appearing in 16th century accounts of Nahua historical traditions. where he is identified as the ruler in the 10th century of the Toltecs. This was a real person, all right, of the Toltecs. By Aztec tradition, their predecessors who had political control of the Valley of Mexico and surrounding regions several centuries before the Aztecs themselves arrived on the scene. In later generations, he was a figure of legend, often confused or conflated with the important Mesoamerican deity Quetzalcoalt. Alright, according to the legend in Salvador, the city of Cuscatlan, the capital city of the Pipil Cuscatlecs, was founded by the exiled Toltec Quetzalcoatl Topiltzin. Alright, so this is what he looks like in the codices. I have, the exact codices, and you can see they depicted him with copper color, right? Alright, he's holding up the snake, right? Moses also held up a brass snake, right? Once he left Tolan, the name was used by other elite figures. Again, once he left Tolan, the same name, what name? Quetzalcoalt, was used by other elite figures. Are they talking about his descendants? To keep a line succession, and was also used by the Meshek, to more easily rule over the Toltecs. All right, so we're in the book Antiquities of Mexico. It says here, comprising facsimiles of ancient Mexican paintings and hieroglyphics. And these are, the sources of these, the book he compiled here, the person, are from the Royal Libraries of Paris, Berlin, and Dresden, the Imperial Library of Vienna, in the Vatican Library, in the Borgian Museum at Rome, in the Library of the Institute at Bologna, and in the Bodleian Library at Oxford. All right, and this is compiled by Lord Kingsborough. This is volume 6. All right, volume 6. All right, and it says here, this is part of a footnote. It is certainly remarkable, as connected with the expectation which the Mexicans entertained of a future redeemer. The Quetzalcoatl should have been called by them by the other name of Mexitli or Mexitli. Cortes, in describing to the Emperor Charles V the horrors which the Mexicans sustained during the last days of the siege in Gomara, and repeating the same history, both mentioned that they consoled themselves in their last sufferings with the hopes of going to heaven to Quetzalcoalt. Quetzalcoalt was worshipped by the Mexicans under the name of Huitzilopochtli. Alright, very important. Remember that name. Alright, so Quetzalcoalt was worshipped by the Mexicans as Huitzilopochtli, so they're the same, which name was corrupted by the Spaniards into Ochilobos, so that the accounts of Cortes and Gomorrah perfectly agree. In Cholula, this god was known by the peculiar appellation of Quetzalcoalt. Alright, so Cholula, right? Before the Aztecs, that was a Toltec city, the Toltecs, alright? Which signifies the green feathered serpent, Dracan, alright, dragon kings, feathered serpent, snake dynasty, the brass serpent, Meshi. With respect to the appellation Mexitli, the Spanish thus marked being always pronounced like a C. It is very remarkable that it is precisely the same as the Hebrew name, and it has these words, and I believe it's Meshach or Messiah, for Tli does not form a part of that proper name, but it is a common termination to Mexican names. This name, from which I think it's Christos right here, Christos, in Greek is derived, signifies anointed, and is peculiarly applied by Christians to Christ. The following passage, translated from the second section of the 7th chapter of the 3rd book of Garcia's Origin of the Indians, shows that the attention of that learned writer had been drawn to this coincidence. In New Spain, the word Mexico or Mexico is found, which, as Brother Stephen de Salazar remarks in Hebrew, and is therefore produced in the 2nd Psalm, and signifies his anointed. And although there is that province, it is the name of a city, and here in the Psalm, the name which the Jews bestowed on their kings and priests, their kings, priests or priest kings, Khans, Dracons, feather serpent, and our Christ our Lord, who as they expected was to come and redeem them. Still, I do not attend to this difference. as this name might easily have been given to a city, since the leader who conducted those people, Mexico, was named Meshi, Moshe, Moeshi, or as others write, Meshi, and the city and nation were afterwards called after him, in the same way as we see that many cities, provinces, and nations have been named after those who peopled or founded them, or to whom they owed their origin. As we shall presently point out, the word Meshi should be noted as being really Hebrew. It's Hebrew, and it agrees surprisingly with the name of the chief head or captain of the Mexicans or Mexicans, all right, after Meshi. Now, this is a part of the book where they're talking about the explanation of the Codex Vaticanus, all right, one of the Aztec codices, all right. Because now we're going.
Robert Dre, bye. We ain't done yet. We ain't done yet. I won't go nowhere. We ain't done yet. My fault. My fault. Just gonna go ahead and get some more. We're gonna go over a little bit of the architecture, right? We're gonna go over some images, a little compilation like slideshow, but at the same time, we're gonna be hearing the mythological stories according to what they're reading, according to some codices, right? So don't go anywhere. All right, let me just set that up. 1 second. Wow, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you guys being here late. I'm sorry being here not late, being here live, my man. Yeah, don't worry about people in an African tag. We're not talking about that. We way past that. It's all good. We way past that. Just don't come with hate. Like we have love for Africans too. We're not here hating on Africans just because we're correcting the status and the identity of our people here in the Americas. You know what I mean? So hold on, let me just get that other video started. Do I have any shows in Spanish? Nah, not yet. I plan to definitely have something I can. Okay, let's see. 1 second. Yeah, I plan to do like a channel in Spanish, hopefully, eventually, translate the stuff. Okay. So let's go over this story. Hope you enjoy the architecture, the images, and also the mythology. Pretty cool. Let's go over it. So we got a little basis, right? We just got a whole almost hour of something I was just trying to kind of show you regarding Quetzalcoatl and how it resembles a lot of the Hebrew stuff, and it's just a lot. It's a lot, So let's go over this, see what they're gonna say here.
Of the so-called classic period, circa 250,000 CE. With the onset of the so-called classic period, circa 250 to 1000 CE, the feathered serpent appeared in more art across Mesoamerica, so it should be no surprise that he was associated with more stories and more roles in local mythology. One of the most important texts for these cosmographies is the Mayan Popol Vuh. This book begins with a declaration of how it is a demonstration, revelation, and account of how things were put in shadow and brought to light by the maker, modeler, named bearer and begetter, Huanapu possum, Huanapu coyote, great white peccary, tapir, sovereign plumed serpent, heart of the lake, heart of the sea, maker of the blue-green plate, maker of the blue-green bowl. Here the feathered serpent appears at the dawn of time wearing his mantle as sovereign, and his appearance is not just limited to the Mayan version of the creation of the cosmos. Although the Popol Vuh is undoubtedly the richest and by modern standards the fullest story to come out of the Mesoamerican cultures, it is not the only version by any means. There is a Nahua version, to be found in the Legend of the Suns in the Codex Chimalpopoca, a Mexica Aztec codex that documents the pre-Columbian history of central Mexico and also describes the Mexica Aztec cosmology. The Nahua people are the direct descendants of the Mexica, and it is known that their language, Nahuatl, has been in continuous use since that time. In the Nahua version of events, there are 5 ages, the 5th being the age the Mexica believed they were living in. The first 4 ages were described in quick succession as the legend of the suns. After the gods divide the earth among them, the sun holds power for 2.5 millennia before the first age arrives. This age was called 4 Jaguar, actually the name of a date, as it was customary to use dates for names. And the humans that lived during this age ate 7 grass for their food. Although it's unknown what exactly is meant by the name 7 grass, the names of the ages are of particular importance since they refer to the date and the method of destruction that age faced. In the case of 7 Jaguar, it was believed that ferocious jaguars consumed it on the day it was prophesied they would, 676 years after its commencement. The second age was called 4 Wind. It lasted 364 years, and it was inhabited by monkeys who ate 12 snake and transformed into turkeys so they could survive the destructive winds that would consume them. The third age was called 4 Rainstorm. It lasted for 312 years before it was consumed on the day of its name. According to the text, the turkeys that survived the third age turned themselves into human nobles at the end of their age, which was brought about by a great rain of fire sent down from a volcano. The fourth age was called 4 Water, and it lasted for 676 years, during which time the nobles ate 4 flour and subsequently had to turn themselves into fish in order to escape the flood that destroyed the world. There is a wonderfully resilient aspect to this story that is often smothered by other stories of the Mexica Aztec. In this Nahua version, humans survive, albeit in different forms, the disasters that keep coming around, so the deadly cycle of creation and destruction is thwarted by human ingenuity and adaptation. Within this story is another common occurrence in Mesoamerican myth, the number 4. In the Mayan version of events, there are 4 ages, and in the Nahua version, there were 4 previous ages before the age of the people who created it. The cosmos divided into 4, there were 4 cardinal directions, and there were 4 petals on the flower. What's also very important is the length of each age and the date on which it was destroyed. The Aztec lived their lives and constructed their cities according to the mathematics that governed the stars. There is no wonder, then, that their cosmology would put equal importance on this system. Every day on the calendar was of importance, so the day a child was born would determine the child's name and also a regime to be followed by their parents and the children themselves, of which the aim was to enhance that day's auspicious benefits to the child's personality and/or life, and to be wary of the potential pitfalls being born on that day would create for them. What is curious about the 5th age is that the gods set about creating a new set of humans in the form of an ideal couple. It would seem that in the Nahua tradition, not even the gods' plans are always successful, however. The first couple were called Tata and Nene, and they were created just before the waters came to destroy the end of the world. The great god Titlacahuan Tezcatlipoca asked them what he could do for them, and they replied that they wanted him to drill a hole in the cypress tree and to put them in it until the waters subsided. The god did so, and gave them a cob of corn each to eat while they waited. When the waters subsided and Tata and Nene knew it was safe, they left the cypress tree and lit a fire to roast some fish. But this was not appreciated by the gods. The smoke from the fire blackened the sky, so Titlacahuan Tezcatlipoca scolded them for what they had done, cut off their heads, and sewed them back onto their buttocks, thus making them the first dogs in the age of the 5th sun. Once the first dogs had been created, the gods all gathered together and wondered who would finally be the masters of the lands they had created for the 5th age. Quetzalcoatl was one of these worried gods, and he set about finding a solution. The first thing he did was travel to Mictlan, the land of the dead, and speak to its lord and lady, Mictlan-Tecutli and Mictlan-Cakchiquels. He told them that he had come for the green stone bones they were guarding, and that he wished to take them with him. Distrusting Quetzalcoatl, they asked what he was going to do with them, to which Quetzalcoatl replied that the gods were unhappy about the uninhabited earth, and that he wished to use the greenstone bones to repopulate it. But Mictlan-Tecutli was either not in favor of the idea of repopulation or simply didn't want to be robbed of his precious greenstone bones, so he set Quetzalcoatl the impossible task of blowing a conch shell horn that had no holes in it. If he could do that, he was welcome to take the bones with him. Like any good trickster, Quetzalcoatl had a trick up his sleeve. He secretly spoke to the worms and bumblebees and the honeybees of the land and asked for their help. They answered his call and burrowed holes into the conch shell, and Quetzalcoatl blew into it with success. Mictlan-Tecutli pretended to relent when he heard the sound of the horn, but when Quetzalcoatl went to take the greenstone bones, he was confronted by the Micteca, the people of the land of the dead, who told him he had to leave the bones in Mictlan. Quetzalcoatl, seeing that he had been betrayed, retreated in quiet contemplation, during which time his Nahuali, or spirit animal in the shamanistic sense, to define it roughly, spoke to him and simply told him to lie. Quetzalcoatl called out to Mictlan-Tecutli, saying he was going to leave the bones, but instead he scooped them up and left. When he picked up the bones, Quetzalcoatl paid no heed to how they lay in Mictlan, and so he mixed them up, mixing male bones and female bones as he ran with them in a bundle. Mictlan-Tecutli soon realized Quetzalcoatl's trick and called to the Micteca and ordered them to dig a pit before the entrance to the land of the living. True to Mictlan-Tecutli's desires, Quetzalcoatl tumbled headfirst into the pit, knocked himself unconscious, and the greenstone bones were strewn about the pit. A group of quails entered the pit and began chewing and breaking up the bones while Quetzalcoatl was unconscious. When he awoke, he turned to his Nahuali and asked what will come of the bones after this, to which his Nahuali told him he had messed up, and what will be will be. Quetzalcoatl brushed himself off, gathered up the bones, and continued running all the way to Tamhuachan, where he gave them to Cihuacuatl, a goddess of motherhood, and begged for her help. Cihuacuatl took the greenstone bones and ground them up in a greenstone bowl. Then Quetzalcoatl came along and cut his genitalia and let them bleed into the bowl. Then the gods came and gave them merit, and from then on the commoners of the world lived because of this merit and the blood Quetzalcoatl spilled for them. There are a few important aspects of this story from a mythological standpoint. The first is that of Quetzalcoatl's role as trickster. Tricksters are very often what are called culture heroes, meaning they are, whether they intended to be or not, responsible for the invention of certain things or aspects of the world as seen by the cultures who worship them. There are many of these characters in all cultures around the world. For example, the Norse god Loki invented the fishing net when he was trying to imagine how the other gods might catch him, and the Greek god Hermes invented the lyre in order to get himself out of trouble with Zeus after stealing Apollo's herd. The Native American spirit god Raven, in the Tsimshian cycle, comes to the dark earth from the heavens where there is light, and subsequently returns to steal the light and bring it to the humans. Tricksters create things, and often create other things by accident. By falling into the pit created by the Mictlan, Quetzalcoatl performs another action of the trickster, that of making mistakes. Tricksters are not infallible gods, a notion invented and clung to by much later civilizations, and it is often their failings that become fortuitous happenstance, as is the case of his falling into the pit and breaking up and mixing the bones. His connection with his Nahuali and other animals of the world, as is the case in the scene with the conch shell, is another example of Quetzalcoatl being a trickster, as tricksters are often dependent on other animals or spirits in the world. They are individualistic, but do not live in a vacuum, and their interests and curiosity only exist in tandem with some devious antagonist or some unfortunate victim of their schemes. What's important in the story of Quetzalcoatl and the first common humans is blood. The most important substance for the Aztecs' religious beliefs was human blood. Across Mesoamerica, the sacrifice of human blood was a central feature of religious ritual, and it was the blood sacrifice of Jesus, so vividly depicted in the colonial churches of Mexico and Guatemala that it can disturb modern visitors, that resonated strongly with the new Catholic converts. While the live human sacrifices performed at the most important temples caught the attention of the Europeans and gave justification for conquests they already intended to achieve, all practitioners of the Aztec religion regularly gave their own blood in rituals. Moreover, it was not only human blood that animated and empowered. According to myth, the serpent god Quetzalcoatl recreated humanity at the beginning of the Third Age by pouring out his own blood over the bones of people of the Second Age. The gods are regularly described offering part of their life essence in the form of blood to transform the world or to empower sons. It's well known that the Aztec practiced human sacrifice, but a common misconception is the scale on which they did so. Human sacrifice was far less common than bloodletting performed by willing agents. Stingray spines and thorns were often used to pierce the tongue or other body parts so that blood could flow into a bowl or onto an altar. This may appear macabre today, but in conjunction with the stories about Quetzalcoatl, there is a certain logic to it for those who earnestly believed in the stories. The Aztec were offering their own blood by way of imitating the sacrifice Quetzalcoatl made for them. There is also an aspect of time that must be mentioned in this respect. To the Aztec, blood was life, and death was a very real and inevitable part of the cycle of human existence. This word, cycle, is key to understanding much of Aztec lore and practice. Bloodletting fed the life force initiated by the gods, and had to be done on a cyclical basis because time did not move in a straight line, but in cycles. What Quetzalcoatl began the day he stole the greenstone bones, those made from the greenstone bones would have to be mindful to repeat, lest the life force become diminished in the world. The gods met at Teotihuacan before the fifth sun was created. There the gods came together and asked each other who would give the world dawn and who would become and carry the sun through the heavens for the first day of the fifth age, the age of nobles and commoners. They were hesitant because, although it was an honor, that honor came at the ultimate price. There was silence at Teotihuacan until Tecusistecatl stepped forward and volunteered. When the gods asked who would become the moon, they asked and asked, but nobody rose to the call. They turned to Nanahuatzin, who was standing meekly listening to what the rest of the gods said, and they said, You shall become the moon." After that, Nanahuatzin agreed. He stepped forward and told the gods that it would be his honor to become the moon. And so they were chosen, and they prepared for the ceremony by fasting for 4 days together. After they fasted, Tecusistecatl and Nanahuatzin gathered around the fire pit they called the God Oven. The rest of the gods bestowed riches and finery upon Tecusistecatl. He had ritual branches made of quetzal feathers, a heart of woven gold, a spine of green stone, and a bloodletting instrument made of coral. Meanwhile, Nanahuatzin was given ritual branches of green grass and reeds, a grass ball made of pine needles, and his bloodletting instrument was a humble Magi thorn. And where they had been preparing, 2 mountains, 2 pyramid mountains, rose out of the ground and stand there to this day, the Sun Pyramid and the Moon Pyramid. After 4 nights of celebration, Tecusistecatl and Nanahuatzin dashed their preparatory objects to the ground, and the gods gave Tecusistecatl a headdress made of egret, but to Nanahuatzin they gave only paper. When midnight arrived, the gods made a procession around the God Oven and then lined up on either side of Tecusistecatl and Nanahuatzin before the fire. But Tecusistecatl hesitated. The gods reprimanded him and shouted at him, but still he would not move. They called out to him to jump, to throw himself into the fire so as to be a sacrifice and to create the sun and the sun god out of himself. But Tecusistecatl would not move. He was frozen before the god oven. Every time he looked at the fire, he grew more daunted by it. He tried 4 times to sacrifice himself, but could not summon the courage, until once again the gods were forced to summon Nahuatzin. Humble Nahuatzin stepped up to the flames, and his courage did not fail him. He closed his eyes calmly and stepped into the flames. He lay down among them, and his flesh began to burn and crack, but he did not cry out. When Tecocistecatl saw Nahuatzin boldly rise to the honor that should have been his, he also threw himself into the fire, and there they burned together. Then, out of the flames, flew a glorious eagle with feathers the cover of evenly singed wings. After the eagle, the fire shifted and outstrode the jaguar, scorched unevenly because of the shifted stones. Due to their bravery, especially that of Nahuatzin, from then on, the Mexica Aztec called the brave eagle jaguar, because Nahuatzin, the eagle, was bravest and therefore deserved the opening naming. Then the gods waited for the dawn. They lay by the fire, looking in all 4 directions until they saw the sky turn red, like the blending of a dye, and soon enough Nahuatzin rose as the first sun into the sky, blazing and warming the land as it rested above them. Then Tecocistecatl as another sun rose into the sky and followed Nahuatzin's course, but it too stopped in the sky. The gods grew nervous. One of them ran to Tecocistecatl and beat the sun with a rabbit and killed it, and yet it would not move. This is when the rest of the gods knew that Tecocistecatl and Nahuatzin's sacrifices were not enough, and they determined they all needed to die. Quetzalcoatl Ehecatl stepped forward and killed the gods, including Xolotl, who tried to escape his fate. When Quetzalcoatl had killed the gods, he turned to the suns, and still they would not move in the sky, so Quetzalcoatl knew what he had to do. He stood up straight, gathered all his strength, and heaved vast amounts of air into his cavernous chest and blew on the sun. Then the sun moved, and the moon moved, and they took up a path that they still follow to this day. This story is another example of the rationale behind human sacrifice and bloodletting. To the Aztec, it was the gods who sacrificed themselves so that the sun and the moon could be created. Also, like the sun and the moon, this act of sacrifice creation would need to be repeated ad infinitum if humans wanted the cycle to continue. The importance of voluntarily sacrificing one's life for the greater good is also apparent here. Tecocistecatl had the chance to gain the greatest honor for the gods, that of becoming the life-bringing sun, but because of his cowardice he was relegated to the role of the moon, the dead sun that was beaten and defaced. It is documented that there were voluntary human sacrifices, but many of them were also captured soldiers. Scholars have discovered evidence that these soldiers who were chosen to be sacrificed partook in ceremonies over the course of several days, including dancing and feasting. These soldiers were expected to face their deaths like Nahuatzin, so that they could take their place in the great cycle of life and death. The Quetzalcoatl of this story is a much more solemn character than that in the story about the birth of humankind. He is referred to as Quetzalcoatl Ehecatl in this story because this is Quetzalcoatl's manifestation as a god of the wind. In this, he is closely connected with Tlaloc, the god of the rain, and he often appears in similar iconography. What's most important about Quetzalcoatl's role here, however, is that of the prime mover. He took it upon himself to sacrifice the gods when the sun would not move, and when he saw that wasn't enough to set things in motion, he mustered his own magical strength in order to do so. The sun and the moon were the foci of the heavens, and for a culture so interested in astronomy, their movements were paramount. Therefore, this act of Quetzalcoatl's would have been seen as no small act to an agricultural people that put such importance on the changing of the seasons. At Teotihuacan, the feathered serpent sprawled its body through maritime imagery and seemingly contrasted with a warlike fiery god. If the feathered serpent and the fiery god do, as some scholars suggest, represent the 2 seasons of the year, then Quetzalcoatl's association with agriculture can be traced back to this great culture. As one scholar brilliantly put it, the dry season was for feeding the gods with bloody wars, while the wet season was for feeding the people. That Quetzalcoatl instigated the cycle that governed these seasons was not enough, as he was also given the honor of being the rain-bearing wind, too. Due to the fact that very little epigraphical evidence from the time of Teotihuacan has been found, it's very difficult to understand how these cultures viewed Quetzalcoatl's predecessors, the feathered serpents. However, it is known that the Mayan word for serpent was the same word they used for sky, so it's likely that he was considered a celestial deity from the earliest usages of the Mayan languages. Given that the leaders of Mesoamerican cultures were often granted and expected to uphold the traditions that facilitated the rain-bearing winds, there was a connection between Quetzalcoatl and nobility, too. For this connection, one may look to the Temple of the Feathered Serpent at Teotihuacan again, where there is evidence of a noble interment, sadly looted many years ago, that suggests this temple may have housed other nobles' tombs as well. There is a story that reflects Quetzalcoatl's association with the elements that provide food for the people. Firstly, it's important to note that the Mexica believed the mountains and the potable water to be intrinsically connected, most probably due to the fast-flowing streams that came down the slopes and were used in their vast irrigation projects. As the story goes, when the commoners were first created in the Fifth Age, the gods were pondering what this new creation should eat. At that point, Quetzalcoatl saw an ant walking along carrying a kernel of corn. Quetzalcoatl questioned the ant, who did his best to ignore the god and keep on his merry way, but Quetzalcoatl was insistent, so eventually the ant gave up and pointed to what was called the Mountain of Produce. Quetzalcoatl turned to look at the mountain, then transformed himself into a black ant and made his way to the mountain and found a kernel of corn and brought it back to the gods at Tamuanchan. They asked Quetzalcoatl what they should do with this mountain. The humans wouldn't be able to access the corn, as they were not shapeshifters like Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl tried to carry the mountain to Tamuanchan on his back, but he wasn't capable. So two of the gods, Ojomoco and Zipactonal, took the kernels of corn they had and began casting lots with them, as the shamans did, and have done for centuries. Their casting revealed the answer to them. They would call on Nanahuatzin, the old thunderbolt, to crack the mountain open, which he did, and all the other rain gods came and stole away all the corn, so they could divest them to the humans another day. As Reed noted, Quetzalcoatl's relationship with the other rain gods is an obvious one. The wind moves the clouds, which produce the rain, which irrigates the land, which was the chief currency and expression of power. In all of the surviving documents from the Mexica culture, it is their vast empire of tributes that is lauded above and beyond any other cultural aspect. Wagon loads of corn were mentioned among the gold and worked materials that added to the riches of the Mexica nobles. Once again, Quetzalcoatl appears involved with nobility and the correct order and maintenance of the universe. Some scholars believe that the end of the great civilization at Tula had its seeds sown in religious discord. The Nonoalca and the Tolteca Chichimeca groups were distinct ethnic groups whose cultural expression is distinct in the material record. Such divisions led to a legend arising that speaks of the fall of Tula in terms of a great battle between two gods, Tezcatlipoca and Quetzalcoatl. Tezcatlipoca was one of the gods who sent Quetzalcoatl to the land of the dead to get the green stone bones, and also one of those who eventually sacrificed himself in the god oven. However, his relationship with Quetzalcoatl is a complex one. K.A. Reed gives a magnificently concise description of Tezcatlipoca's attributes. As a god of the night sun, the night wind, and the cosmos's four waters, each of which was controlled by one of his four aspects, he played a key role in cosmic creation, oversaw life events both good and bad, educated people and passed judgment on their actions, controlled success in war, legitimated and delegitimated Mexica rulership, and by the end of the conquest, to some he had become the devil himself. The initial attributes may seem familiar after reading the earlier parts of this book. It is indeed true that Tezcatlipoca, though not a minor god by any means, did adopt many of the attributes of Quetzalcoatl in the later years of the Mexica. By the time the Spanish arrived, he had become such a prevalent deity that the Spanish felt the need to vilify him. The antagonism between Tezcatlipoca and Quetzalcoatl goes way back to the beginning of time, according to the Mexica version of events. It is said that Tezcatlipoca ruled over the first of the 5 ages, but Quetzalcoatl, out of either brotherly animosity or jealousy, knocked Tezcatlipoca out of the sky, and as a result, Tezcatlipoca returned in the form of a jaguar that destroyed the world. Quetzalcoatl restarted the world after him and ruled over it until Tezcatlipoca returned as the god of the night wind and destroyed the world again. This is one reason why some scholars have speculated that Tezcatlipoca was the embodiment of change through violence. Another reason for this attribution is the history the Mexica told of the real rulers, Tezcatlipoca and Quetzalcoatl. According to Mexica tradition, Chichen Itza was invaded by an exiled ruler known as the Feathered Serpent. This ruler had come from Tula, which was considered the greatest artistic civilization to that date, and so, after he took over Chichen Itza from the native Itza tribe, he instigated the greatest artistic and architectural advances that culture had ever enjoyed. This is a common notion among the Mexica, whose many myths all tend to refer to themselves as being invaders from the north, establishing and taking the greatest cities in Mesoamerica. The veracity of such a story is difficult to pin down, however. Much of what is known of this feathered serpent invader comes from post-conquest sources. K.A. Reed, once again, breaks the problem down concisely, and that there are 4 issues with it. Firstly, that the sources are not only late, but they're also fragmented and are not necessarily related to each other. Secondly, the interpretation of said texts are loose and can, in fact, be interpreted in different ways that don't necessarily land upon the feathered serpent being the invading force that revolutionized Chichen Itza. Thirdly, if the Toltec exiles came from a much greater, much more artistically accomplished civilization than the Itza, then why are the constructions at Chichen Itza so much more accomplished than those found in Tula? And lastly, it's so difficult to distinguish distinct architectural styles at Chichen Itza. Yes, there are certainly Toltec influences, but these can easily be explained by comparing modern cities' variety of neoclassical, Rococo, Baroque, Gothic, and any other artistic style that is not necessarily native to that city. Humans around the world copy and imitate the styles they appreciate the most. What is most likely to be the case is that the Mexica glorified the inhabitants and the invaders of both Tula and Chichen Itza to such a degree that this myth unfolded out of a non-existent golden age, thanks to mythological imagination and loose memories of a peripatetic past. Quetzalcoatl performed a vital function in this respect for the Mexica as a civilization. According to the myth, the Toltec city of Tula was ruled over by Quetzalcoatl until his political enemies in the form of Tezcatlipoca ousted him. This appears to have been the case in the real world too, as the Colhua royal line at Tula was also ousted by their political enemies, which was to have an enormous impact on the political balance of the region. Toward the end of the 14th century, the first chief speaker of Mexica, the Tlatoani, the official title of the ruler of the Mexica henceforth, was Lord Acamapichtli, and it was during this reign that the Mexica truly became a political entity in their own right. Until that time, the Mexica were still the outsiders to the area, and were struggling to throw off the yoke of nearby Azcapotzalco. However, Lord Acamapichtli was the son of a nobleman from the Colhua people, and his mother was a Mexica princess. By ascending to the Mexica leadership, Lord Acamapichtli united 2 formidable cultures with an ethos that would remain henceforth as a fundamental pillar of Mexica culture: militarism. The Toltec city of Tula still bears the marks of this aspect of its iconography and material remains. Skull racks, on which were skewered the skulls of sacrificed enemy warriors, as well as the bloody Cakchiquels statues and the vast amount of predatory beast symbolism, all highlight the Toltec affinity for violence. This runs in tandem with the religious changes felt at Tula, where images of the antagonistic gods Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca were slowly but emphatically integrated into the architecture that had before them been the principal domain of the rain god Tlaloc. The increase in militarism and the more violent symbolism that came with it appears to have been a result of the invading tribes from the north, notably the Mexica striving for political independence. In the form of Lord Acamapichli, the unification of Mexica and Toltec civilizations was also seen as the incorporation of the Toltec god, Quetzalcoatl, into the Mexica tradition, not necessarily supplanting the principal deity, Huitzilopochtli, but endowing Mexica leaders with the dual identity of Quetzalcoatl, Tezcatlipoca from then on. Perhaps one of the most ignominious stories of Quetzalcoatl comes from the Codex Chimalpopoca. This codex, evidently lost at some point during the 20th century but thoroughly studied by the German scholar Walter Lehmann before its loss, gives a brief account of some of the deities of the Mexica, written in Spanish by a 16th century or 17th century cleric. Given the late writing of this section, scholars look upon it with a certain skepticism. But the Codex Chimalpopoca contains stories of the legend of the suns that bear such a resemblance to the Mayan Popol Vuh that they tend to take its contents at face value and assume it to be a fairly honest account of the Mexica religion. In the Codex Chimalpopoca is the story of Quetzalcoatl's final days on Earth. As the story goes, Quetzalcoatl traveled to the land where the sun rises in the year 1 Reed, reportedly 895 CE, because he knew he was going to die that day, just as he had been born on that day, and he wished it to take place in this land. This came about after Quetzalcoatl grew discontented with the practice of human sacrifice. When the other gods heard this, they gathered together, and Tezcatlipoca ordered them to make pulque, the alcoholic beverage made from fermented sap of the magi plant, still drunk today, so that Quetzalcoatl would lose his senses and fail to even perform his own bloodletting for the good of humanity and the gods. When Quetzalcoatl arrived in the land where the sun rises, Tezcatlipoca arrived there too, bearing the pulque and a large mirror. Tezcatlipoca told the priest who was keeping guard of Quetzalcoatl to tell the god a young man had arrived to see him, to give and show him his body. When the priests said this to Quetzalcoatl, however, he was confused. What could show him his body possibly mean? So Quetzalcoatl told the priests to go back to the youth and tell him to show them what he would show Quetzalcoatl. But Tezcatlipoca refused and demanded that the priests allow him access to the god. The priests allowed him through, and Tezcatlipoca gave the god salutations and declared that he was his lowly servant and had brought him a gift. Quetzalcoatl admired the young man's effort in traveling so far to greet him and asked to see the thing the youth had brought. When Tezcatlipoca revealed the mirror, Quetzalcoatl was horrified at the sight of his own body. "If my followers see this, they will be horrified too," he said in shock, because he had eyebrows completely puffed up and eye sockets all pushed in. His face was covered with pockmarks. He was not pretty to look at. When he heard this, Tezcatlipoca went away, and soon came some of the other gods who had conspired with Tezcatlipoca, and they laughed and mocked Quetzalcoatl. When Coyot-Linahual, the feather artisan, heard of this mistreatment, he ran to Quetzalcoatl's need and addressed him, advising him to go out and let his subjects see him. Quetzalcoatl was clearly dubious about this plan, but Coyot-Linahual offered to adorn the god, and so Quetzalcoatl agreed. First, Coyot-Linahual created a feather shield and other draping clothes. Then he gave Quetzalcoatl a mask made of turquoise, and then he painted his lips red and his eye sockets yellow. He gave him serpent's fangs and a beard of the turquoise bird tipped with flamingo feathers, and made it long so it could be tucked in far below his chin. Coyot-Linahual held up another mirror to show Quetzalcoatl his new finery, and Quetzalcoatl was impressed. So much so that he took Coyot-Linahual's advice and went out so that his subjects could see him. When he had left, Coyotl went to the other conspiring gods and told them that Quetzalcoatl had left and that their time had come to follow him. They did, and they arrived at Quetzalcoatl's house in Tula, but once again they were faced with guards unwilling to let them enter. They returned 3 times before one of the guards asked them from whence they had come, and they replied that they had come from the great Toltec mountain, Tlamacazapa, which Quetzalcoatl heard and told his guards to let these pious men pass. They entered and gave them the vegetables and green chilies they had brought for him, but they found him fasting and unwilling to try the pulque they had brought. "It is a libation, sire. Place your finger in the liquid and taste it. It is good and strong," they said. Quetzalcoatl did this and agreed that it was fresh, and he drank. Then he drank again, and his new friends pushed 3 more servings onto Quetzalcoatl. When the god drank it, the others gave the pulque to the servants until everyone in the house was drunk. Quetzalcoatl told the gods to bring his sister Quetzalcoatl to join him so they could get drunk together. The gods went to find Quetzalcoatl at the hill of Nonhualco and told her that her penitent brother wished for her to join him. When she agreed, she went to Quetzalcoatl's house, and there she and her servants also took their libations and were all soon drunk. When this happened, however, brother and sister and the rest of the servants no longer claimed to be doing penance. Their piety left them. They no longer descended to the river, nor did they pierce their tongues with thorns. They did nothing about their penance until dawn. When they all woke, they were filled with shame, and Quetzalcoatl finally resolved that he should waste no more time on this mortal plane. So he asked his servants to prepare for him a great stone chest. When they did this, he lay down in it, and they carried him to the sea. When they arrived there, he put on all his finery again, cried, and prepared himself to stand in the fire. The flames tore through his feathered finery, and soon there was nothing left of Quetzalcoatl but ashes, which rose into the air and onwards into the sky. When the ashes reached the sky, all the rarest birds in the world flew up with them, in a medley of colors the likes of which had never been seen before, until Quetzalcoatl's ashes turned into the star that is seen at dawn, and there he will stay until the day of his return. According to the story above, Quetzalcoatl only lived 53 years, and before he immolated himself, he ordered his servants to remove all evidence of his reign on earth. This would suggest that the Quetzalcoatl recorded in the Codex Chimalpopoca is a mortal man rather than a god. Stating that Quetzalcoatl and Quetzalcoatl did nothing until dawn has been interpreted by scholars to mean that they had committed incest, and it was for this reason that Quetzalcoatl finally left the earthly plane. But the references to not descending to the river or piercing their tongues with spines appear to be simple references to impiety, rather than explicit references to incest. That being said, the text is slippery on this matter, so it might be correct to err on the side of euphemism. An interesting point about Quetzalcoatl's rival, although Quetzalcoatl does not even appear to recognize him in this text, is that his name, Tezcatlipoca, actually means smoky mirror. The nomenclature blends the mortal and divine aspects of the story as much as Quetzalcoatl's end in the sky as the morning star does. Whether or not the Aztec people believed Quetzalcoatl was a human and one of their ancestral leaders is difficult to verify with the sources at hand today. However, what is known is that during and especially after the arrival of the conquistadores, the line between human and divine was blurred again. After arriving in the Valley of Mexico, Cortés attacked the large city of Cholula, massacred many of its 100,000 inhabitants, and burned it down, destroying perhaps as many as 365 temples. He then marched to the Aztec city of Tenochtitlan, impressively situated on an island in Lake Texcoco. When his men arrived at the lakeshore, they were astounded at the sight, and Cortés was ultimately greeted by emissaries of the Aztec king Montezuma II, and invited to enter his great city of Tenochtitlan. Whether Montezuma was fearful of a repeat of the butchery at Cholula, which Cortés had planned, or, as was reported in the Aztec account of the event, he thought Cortés was an incarnation of Quetzalcoatl, The hospitality Montezuma offered to the Spanish was ill-advised. The Aztec king made a second error by putting up his guests in the palace Cakchiquels. Wandering about the magnificent guest quarters, the conquistadores discovered a room full of treasure. The hostility toward the Aztec religion began immediately upon the Spaniards' arrival. In writing home about his reaction upon entering the Templo Mayor, Cortés describes his first acts of vandalism. In these chapels are the images or idols, although, as I have said before, many of them are also found on the outside. The principal ones, in which the people have greatest faith and confidence, I precipitated from their pedestals and cast them down the steps of the temple, purifying the chapels in which they had stood, as they were all polluted with human blood, shed in the sacrifices. In the place of these I put images of Our Lady and the saints, which excited not a little feeling in Montezuma and the inhabitants. With their appetite whetted by the sight of the treasure, the Spaniards began to spoil for conflict, and the eager conquistadores found excuses when they interpreted an Aztec religious ceremony and, appalled by the sight of human sacrifice, massacred the Aztecs in the main temple of Tenochtitlan. In the subsequent riot, Montezuma, who by this time was being held hostage by the Spanish, was paraded before his subjects to quell the unrest. Whether he was killed by a rock thrown by one of his own people or murdered by a Spanish soldier is still unclear. But upon his death, the riot turned even uglier. Cortés and his troops viciously fought their way out of Tenochtitlan and crossed a causeway to the mainland. Then they laid siege to the Aztec city, cutting off the food supply. The culmination of the struggle was a hand-to-hand melee upon the steps of the Templo Mayor itself, as the remainder of the Eagle Warrior Society brothers fought to the death to defend Huitzilopochtli, their patron. In the process, every single temple in the city was desecrated, every altar was broken, and every statue was smashed. As the Spanish first looted and then consolidated their control over Tenochtitlan, they would finish this work by leaving behind few traces of the formal Aztec religion. In the years that followed, this pattern would be repeated over and over again throughout the lands ruled by Spain, until all of the temples and pyramids were eliminated. Having subdued and destroyed Tenochtitlan, Cortés then attacked and destroyed all the cities in the Valley of Mexico that had been allied with the Aztecs. To top it all off, smallpox epidemics that were transferred to the natives from the Spanish wiped out an untold number even after the conquistadors left, with an estimated 10 to 50% of the remaining inhabitants killed. The numbers dwindled so much that the conquistadors actually merged smaller societies by forcefully transferring natives into larger population centers. Thus, in the span of just a few years, the Aztec Empire was almost completely wiped out, and only a few decades after the arrival of Cortés's armies, in 1519, the Aztec religion was shattered, the temples destroyed, the pyramids had churches on top or were obliterated, as was the case of the Templo Mayor. The priesthoods were killed off or driven underground, and none of the grand public rituals took place. The physical destruction of the temples would eliminate the places of worship and end the principal festivals and rituals, including the practice of human sacrifice. But it would not completely eliminate the religion itself. To do this, the Spanish sent out a second army consisting of Franciscans, Dominicans, and Jesuits to set up missionary posts throughout Latin America, slowly but effectively converting the people to Catholicism. In its place, Roman Catholicism took deep root in the landscape of Mesoamerica and is still the dominant faith of Mexico today. When it came to Christianizing Quetzalcoatl, it was easier than usual to intertwine this indigenous god with Christian beliefs. Catholics like Father Diego de Duran, who wrote in the 16th century, took descriptions of Quetzalcoatl being bearded and having a white face to mean that he was actually the living Christ, who went out into the world to spread his message. That there is a story of Topiltzin Quetzalcoatl being born of a virgin only served to fuel this leap of faith. Indeed, there are similarities between some of the stories and those in the Bible. Diego de Duran explained one such coincidence when he asked for information about Quetzalcoatl's departure. He began to relate to me the 14th chapter of Exodus, saying that Quetzalcoatl had arrived at the sea with many people, and that he continued and had struck the sea with a staff, and it had dried up and become a road, through which he entered, both he and his people. although that his persecutors had entered after him, and the waters had returned to their place, and nothing more was known of them. That said, it's important to note that this was as much a retelling of an original myth as it was a local metamorphosis of the story in order to put it into a setting that was familiar to the Spanish. There is such evidence of local Mesoamericans reshaping their own lore to place it in a system which they had no choice but to accommodate. The association of Quetzalcoatl with Jesus Christ is an endeavor taken up heartily by the Church of Latter-day Saints as well. In a fairly extensive article in the Journal of Book of Mormon Studies, Diane E. Worth claims that there are plausible associations between Christ and Quetzalcoatl, including being a deity playing a role in the creation, associated with the bread of life, meaning maize here, assisting the dead, shedding blood to save mankind, a deity dying on a tree, resurrecting and becoming responsible for the rebirth of the deceased, a personage of light who is associated with the sun. Of course, this is still a somewhat tenuous list of associations, since there are few cultures in the world that do not have some deity or deities with the same similarities. Discovering a real association with Jesus Christ was the hope of not just the Mormons, but also Diego de Duran as well. He desperately hoped and searched for a gospel written in Hebrew that would prove Jesus or St. Thomas, the wandering saint, had visited the New World. He did not find one. But he did find numerous indigenous screenfold manuscripts, which he did not bother to preserve. An interesting aspect of the connection with St. Thomas dates to 1794, when the Dominican priest Servando Teresa de Mier delivered a sermon in which he criticized the colonial authorities for their corruption and claimed that the glory of the conquest of Mexico had nothing to do with the Spanish. According to de Mier, the conquest was actually foretold 1,000 years beforehand when St. Thomas appeared in Mexico, and whose memory subsequently remained in the form of Quetzalcoatl. Eventually, Quetzalcoatl became adopted by those in favor of independence, and he has been a symbol of Mexican individualism ever since. In the 20th century, Quetzalcoatl became a major symbol in the indigenismo movement, a political ideology present in many American countries that sought to raise the profile of indigenous peoples. Quetzalcoatl became a symbol of the Mexican people, and his role as a cultural hero was emphasized by many artists, both in Mexico and abroad.
Oh, wow. Hey. Hey, welcome to the club, Martin. Hey, appreciate it. Hey, G-Play. Thanks to everybody that tuned in. Appreciate you guys taking the time to be here, really. You know, on your Saturday. Hope you enjoyed the little throwback compilation when it comes to Quetzalcoatl, you know, when we got the earlier part and also this mythological breakdown. Of course, they interpreted their own ways. We got to touch the hijack a little bit, but in general, you can kind of go verify the codices and see what they're talking about. We're going to read a lot of that in Antiquities of Mexico, Lord Kingsborough's book, in Antiquity Volume 6. We're going to get back into, because we've only read parts of it. We're going to read whole chapters and stuff. You guys will see how thorough it is, the translation in Kingsborough's book. So yeah, you know, Quetzalcoatl, there's more to Quetzalcoatl. I hope you guys see what I was trying to show. You know, I hope you remember. We're talking about priest kings. Amaru. Yahawashi? You know, Quetzalcoatl. Yeah, the feathered plumb serpent, the dracon. Oh, it's all good, DJ. It's all good. You can play it back from the beginning. Yeah, we're about to go ahead and end it right here, but I appreciate you guys tuning in again. We're going to go out with one of the songs from our good brother and one of our producers contributing to the channel, and that is Robin Dre Beach. Shout out to Red Lion, Robin Dre Beach. All right, the song is called Reaction, and I hope this video has a reaction, either personally to you or in general. Reaction, reaction. Shout out to Robin Dre Beats. All right. Shout out to all the music producers. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate you guys for real. All right. Just take a look at these images before we go. Wow, wow. Hey, signs, hey, DJ Sepe Ali Chikta Okla. Thanks for coming through. Want to be delivered. Kick back with Nick, just try to catch up if you're new, and try to just have patience with other people. Try to, remember, know thyself different ways, we're all learning still. Oh, wow. Beautiful day right here. Wow. Yeah. Oh, Hawa, protect us, bless us, give us the knowledge, the wisdom to discern in this matrix, in this reality, or at least guide us to be peaceful, to be natural by law. Shout out to natural by law. Shout out to Drop Nation. Shout out to everybody, all the moderators. Thank you for coming through. All right, Martin, Alichita, Cesar, Beltran, KRNCG, Nitzia. Yeah, thank you all for coming through. J9, yeah. Thank you, Sean Black, Chicago reference. Cindy, Jacqueline, thank you for coming through. Everybody that came through, appreciate y'all. Jackie, thank you for coming through as well. All right. Shoshint I, thank you. Hey, Corey, thanks for coming through. Seiya Bonanza, thanks for coming through. Empress Infinite, Shochilt I. All right, all make 12, you already know. Thanks for coming through. SP Mama, 44-4. Lisa Miller, thanks for coming through. Hope you can catch up to the presentations. Terminator, thank you for the donation. I just saw it. Thank you very much. You did a lot. Thank you very much. I appreciate it very much, man. I value it highly. Thank you for coming through, everybody. Thomas Ben Israel. Mad Preacher, the Vintage Mom, Stell. Yeah. GEW. Yeah, AG Play, thank you for all of y'all that came through. Giovanni Reese, thank you for coming through. You already know. Oh, wow, much love. Thank you. Pura vida, mi gente. Pura vida, thanks. Yeah. Hey, Nitzia, thank you. I appreciate you very much. Big sister. Sundown, baby, y'all. Sundown, you already know. Tawata. Hawa. Thank you, Hawa. Go back to the images. It's still playing. The images and the music still playing. Utah Aslan, huh? Huitzlilopotlin. What? The Sigua? Mexica Aztec slaves sent to Jamaica? Say what? Hey, thank you. Big EJ the Smoker. You already know. Shermanator, thank you again. Harbor 71. Bando Hakeem. You just in time, but yeah, you just gotta watch from the beginning because we're at the dismount. We are at the dismount. I appreciate you guys coming through. Much love and protection. Blessings. Frank Joseph, yeah. Blessings. Science, you already know. Thanks for coming through. Yeah. Have a blessed rest of your Shabbat, Saturday, Sábado. All right, we're going to go out again with reaction. Shout out to Robin Dre Beats. Much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Wow.
Robert Dre, bye. Robert Dre, bye.